gentlemen. Wrestling has more than one royal family. I am my kingdom! I am my kingdom!
So here we are, everybody. We're about a week, or we're actually 2 days away from Christmas now, which means we're 9 days away from the end of the year, and this is the time a year where usually we Jeff and I would be kind of compiling our lists, and maybe next Monday we would talk about like what we maybe we would try to put some time together this week since it's Christmas and we have time off a little bit to kind of like put together a list of what our best matches are, what our best wrestlers are, what our women are. Well, fuck women. Seriously. What our,
I'd kind of like to. It's been a while.
What our shows
Just
are.
saying.
Like that,
okay.
like we did last year, and like we tend to do when we're doing one of these kinds of shows. But next Monday is going to be kind of a show, kind of a different type of show for us because the following weekend we're going to be covering back-to-back live shows on Wrestle Kingdom. So it would make more sense for us to do a Wrestle Kingdom preview next Monday than it would be to do anything else.
Right.
And so today we're just going to kind of spitball and talk about we're going to talk about Impact because they had some of their best, they had some great stuff going on, including the Throwback Throwdown episode that Jeff and I both adored. But we're also
wait. You said, hold on. I hate to interrupt you, but you said great or greatest thing ever.
I just said great.
No, greatest thing ever. That was one of the best shows I've ever seen. Period.
Cool. And then, but then we're going to kind of like maybe like not even make official awards this year, but just kind of talk about what we loved in the world of pro wrestling this year. And I'm just going to start off by saying that with all the great wrestlers in the world, and watching these episodes of Impact and what he did on the Throwback Throwdown as a Jim Cornette look-alike or sound-alike or be-alike guy, and then just everything he does in the ring and outside the ring. Kenny Omega's great. Ray Phoenix is great. Jay White is great. Zack Sabre Jr. is great. Will Ospreay is great. But my favorite wrestler continues to be Sami Callihan. I cannot get enough of that.
I can't disagree with that either. Plain and simple. I said that last year. I remember towards the end of the year, I started touting Sami Callihan as being one of the top 4 or 5 wrestlers in the world. And I remember when I first said it, you were kind of pulled back a little bit by it. But then after a couple weeks of really watching what he does, you were right on board. And the beginning of this year, everything he did on Impact was insane. And I don't want to say insane, but it was just so well done. And then his feud and then eventual partnership with Mance Warner on MLW was some of the best stuff I've ever seen. Like those two, I am so disappointed that Jim Cornette put his own personal feelings ahead of what was best for wrestling and just TV in general, and broke those two guys up, because what they had going at the beginning of the year was some of the best stuff I've ever seen on TV, period. And he's continued to roll that through. I mean, we kind of were a little bit sketchy on his whole feud with Tessa, and he's played this feud to perfection. He took what was a gimmick match and made Tessa his equal in that very first match. And then and I don't know, it was mainly Sami, but Sami was able to take their rematch and go from that mutual respect thing to his heel character, but still keeping Tessa on that level. And he's done it continuously throughout the last 4 months to keep Tessa on that level, so where now she's a legitimate number 1 contender for a heavyweight title. Or a world title, I guess. I don't think they're heavyweight titles anymore, but a world title. the work that Sami Callihan has done, I don't know that there's anybody better in the business at being able to do what he's done. He's come from the bottom to the top in 1 year.
I wouldn't necessarily say the bottom. I mean, he had the great feat against Pentagon last year too. But
right, and last year he was one of our favorite characters of the year. He was one of our favorite wrestlers of the year. But when people look at Sami Callihan, it always takes 2 to 3 years for people to really start to vibe on someone. I mean, look at Seth Rollins. He really started to get kickstarted in 2014, 15. And it wasn't until last year when people really were like, oh, hey, Seth Rollins is pretty good. And I feel like we're in that same boat with Sami. Sami, a couple of years ago when he broke away from NXT and that awful Solomon Crow character and came to Impact and MLW, and he was kind of that bottom feeder. And he really worked himself up and developed his character. And his character hit a few hiccups along the way. But he's been able to develop his character over the last 2 years to right now where he might be the most compelling character on TV.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that sentiment from you. One thing you didn't say in all that was how great his match against Tessa Blanchard was. You mentioned the rematch, but I mean the very first match at was it Slammiversary?
Slammiversary, I think it was.
I think it was a Slammiversary, and
I mean I didn't look it up, but
that's still one of my matches of the year. I mean it's in my top 10, if not my top 5 for matches of the year. It was that damn good. And it followed up a tremendous match between Michael Elgin and Brian Cage too. So it wasn't like he didn't have any competition on that night, but it still should.
Right, that is true.
It still stood out, and there's still guys out there that I'm looking at you, Miz fan, who call Sami Callihan a tryhard, but I really don't get it at all. I think he's absolutely phenomenal. It's funny because
for Miz to call him a tryhard, remember Miz, he is exactly what you were 3 years ago, 3 maybe 4 years ago, and it was what 2. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I misheard that. I thought you were talking about Miz, but if Miz fan, your hero was exactly where Sami Callihan is now. Miz was there probably 3 or 4 years ago when he was first getting those title runs and first being looked at as number one guy. And then he got kind of his beatdown from there and had to work himself back to where, 2 years ago, we thought he was the best wrestler. He would have been our number one guy if we'd done a show. He was that good at everything he did. I mean, he basically carried both Raw and SmackDown there for almost a year. And then, he's kind of fallen off a little bit since then, but that's not his fault. He's still putting on the phenomenal work that he did. But Sami, for the things that Sami has accomplished just this year alone, and we can only look at, Impact and MLW, but the way he was able to transform himself from being this scumbag heel into this kind of tweener and the whole dynamic he had with Mance Warner. And that just every promo they did was nails. Every match they had was 5-star. They were just on point with everything those two did together. And then he, had his exodus from MLW and kind of focused more on MLW and his relationship with the Golden Draw, his relationship with Madman Fulton and all of OVW, or OVE, sorry. And then the way that he kind of transitioned himself into that semi-heel yet sympathetic character with the way he handled the whole Tessa Blanchard stuff. And that first match, and I'm not going to disagree with you. It's probably, I'd have to sit down and look at it, but off the top of my head, it's probably one of my top 10 matches of the year. I thought they were amazing in it. I thought that Sami had a way to put Tessa over as an equal, and the way he went and did with the bat thing at the end, it kept his character, but at the same time was giving respect to Tessa. And then to follow that up with kind of morphing back into Sami while still respecting Tessa. And now I don't think that if Sami had not acted the way Sami did over this last 4 months, that Tessa would be a believable number one contender for a world title. But I think the way that Sammy has carried himself and the way that he's continually put Tessa over, and I don't want to say put Tessa over because I don't think he did. I think Tessa had all the tools. But the way that Sammy was able to justify her tools, put her on his level in a way that nobody else would have ever been able to put a woman on their level before.
Yeah, that's very true. I think Tessa was already on the rise, and I think that she went through, she went through the women's division. She was coming up, and she beat Joey Ryan, I think it was, right? Because Joey Ryan filled in for Eli Drake,
right?
Unbreakable, and then she kept rising up the ranks. But I think it was going to take somebody, that was already an established star for the company to really get her over to the top. Kind of way that Kurt Hennig did for Bret Hart is a famous example. To get her to that spot where she was going to be believable as a top star. So I don't think it's anything negative to say that Sammy put her over. That's everybody.
No, absolutely not.
That's what you do when you're a pro wrestler, and that's how people get over is by and they got themselves over. I mean, they got each other over, honestly.
And I was just going to say that too. I was literally just going to say that you can't put past the fact that this feud that he's had with Tessa has gotten himself over to a point where he's the Impact World Champ. Last year at this time, would you have thought of him as the Impact World Champ? I don't think I would have. I mean, we had Austin Aries, we had Moose, we had Killer Cross, we had Cage was in the mix. John Morrison or Johnny Impact was in the mix. You had so many other people, like even, and we'll talk more about him later. But Eddie Edwards was all these people were in the mix. Where Sami Callihan was just like this despicable bastard who was, he was kind of a top mid carder. But I don't think at this time last year I would have looked at him and said, oh yeah, he's a main eventer. He's a draw. He says he's the draw, but is he really the draw? Where now you look at him and you look at the rest of that Impact roster, Sammy's the draw. He is the most compelling character in wrestling right now, and it's hard for me to say that because I love what Jay White's been doing. I absolutely love him. I think MJF has had a few misses here and there. I'm so disappointed in what happened with Matt Taven towards the end of the year. But I think right now, if you look at the biggest draw in wrestling, I don't know that there's anybody bigger than Sammy, as long as you can. Because I don't want to say as long as because if you can either respect his in-ring ability, which he has a ton of. You can respect his charisma, which he has a ton of, and you can respect what he's done for the business this entire year from day one, starting with his feud with Jimmy Havoc, and then moving on to Mance Warner, and then everything he's done in Impact Wrestling onto Tessa. I mean, this Tessa feud's been going on 6 months now, and it's literally brought them both over. I just don't know that there is more of a guy that has been from start to finish the guy in wrestling.
Well, first of all, I'm just going to be a bit pedantic about what you said.
All right,
the top draw in wrestling is the WWE name. The second
fuck
draw
that.
in
I don't
wrestling
care.
is the AEW name. But as far as individual wrestlers in an indie level promotion, then yeah, I think you're probably right. I think Sammy's probably the guy right now.
I would argue that even amongst wrestling smarks, and I know there's people that are going to just watch WWE because it's WWE, and there's people that are just going to watch AEW because it's not WWE. Let's face it, as much as I love AEW and we do a show about them on Wednesdays, and speaking of which, is there going to be one this Wednesday with it being Christmas Day?
There's not.
Okay.
No, they had already announced that the one that this past Wednesdays was the final Impact of the year.
Okay, I wasn't sure if they were going to have one or not. For some reason that I missed that. But you look at the way that people treat AEW, and it's kind of sad because they have such talent. The Bucks, the Kenny Omega, Adam Page, and so on. The list goes on and on and on. But people are more looking at AEW like it's not WWE, so it's great. I mean, AEW was anointed as the greatest thing ever before they even had a match. Just because they had money behind them, they had some top stars, and they weren't WWE. Ring of Honor has gone out of its way to kind of push AEW up the ladder. Impact has been having its issues for years. But the reality is it's WWE, and then it's not WWE, which by default is AEW right now. I think people are overlooking what is happening on Impact. I think Impact is on fire right now. And they may not have the biggest names. They may have lost a lot of people over time. You know, give them some credit, because as much as I hate Josh Matthews, I don't know that there's a better team. And I'm saying team, because we look at Riccaboni, and Riccaboni is great. We look at Kevin Kelly, and he is great. But as far as team, can you imagine Don Callis being the way Don Callis has been with anybody other than Josh Matthews? I hate Josh Matthews. I think he's a horrible announcer. But he brings out something in Don Callis which is magical.
No, because I don't know if there's anybody he can insult as much as he insults Josh.
And that's exactly it. I mean, these two announcers, Josh is terrible. I mean, he's not even slightly a good announcer. And I don't know if it's still a residue of his WWE days where he was having lines fed to him. I don't know if he just doesn't have the timing he needs. But the way Don Callis is able to pick him apart in every moment boosts that entire announcement team to the point where I laugh more at those announcers than I do at any other announcers on this that I hear, period. I mean, Kevin Kelly is a great play-by-play guy. So is Ian Riccaboni. I really like Nigel. I just wish he was able to get a word in edgewise over those other two idiots. But as far as an actual team goes, I may have to put it on Callis and Josh Matthews.
Yeah, that's probably true. I mean, I did really enjoy the team of Tony Schiavone and what the hell's his name?
Excalibur. Oh, no. The broccoli guy. What was the guy from MLW?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I enjoyed that announced team.
Rich Bocchini.
Yeah, Rich Bocchini.
And I did too. Well, that's what MJF called him. He called him broccoli one time. But yeah, and I did really like those two when they were clicking too. But obviously, Schiavone's not part of that, and he was only a part of it for a couple of weeks. I liked Cornette with Bocchini as well. But I still don't think they have the... I don't think that either Cornette or Schiavone had the kind of comedic timing that Callis has and can make something out of nothing the way that Callis does.
Yeah, that's a very true point. I mean, Callis is great with anybody, though. He was great with Kelly. He was great with Kevin Kelly and what's his name, Rocky Romero in NJPW as well.
I just hope he comes back for Wrestle Kingdom for only one reason. I want to hear him scared of Minoru Suzuki just one more time. Just one more time, I want to hear that. And those of you that don't know, go back and watch any Minoru Suzuki match that Callis calls.
You know, it's interesting because if he does call that, I mean, that means he's going to be calling some AEW wrestlers because both Jon Moxley and Chris Jericho are on the Wrestle Kingdom cards.
They're letting Moxley back for that?
Yeah.
I thought after his stripping of the title, he was no longer allowed.
He is wrestling Lance Archer for that championship.
Oh, you know what? I'd pay to see that.
In a Texas Death match.
I would pay to see that. Oh, wait, I am. Granted, I don't pay that much, so I'm okay with it. And NJPW will give me main event matches every time I turn that channel on, so I'm okay with it. Right. That is the one app. I mean, besides the WWE Network, because of all of the extra stuff I get to watch on there. But I will say this, that the NJPW World app is probably the one app that I pay for that is actually worth it. Like, I can turn that on at any time, and I know I'm getting a good match.
Yeah, as long as it works. You know, I mean, there's been times where I've had problems with my Amazon app.
It never fails me on my phone.
Well,
Now,
yeah,
the Ring of Honor app, on the other hand, we have a few issues with that one.
I haven't had any issues with that one for a while, actually.
Yeah, because you're usually jumping in when I'm on it. And then I have the issues. Fuck, I hate that app. I'm sure on the Roku, it works great. On Amazon, the only way I can get through it is through the internet. And the Amazon internet is not good for it. On my phone, it's hit and miss if it's going to work. And on my laptop, it's so choppy that and the fact that it doesn't resume where you left off is another thing I think that really irritates me about it.
What does for me?
It doesn't resume it resumes where you left off?
Yeah.
I fucking hate you. I'm paying $160 a year for that, and I can't even get it to resume. I gotta push
It's probably because you don't have a Roku.
Why would I have a Roku when I pay for Amazon?
Well, there's a Prime app on Roku.
That's like sacrilegious, almost. There's a Prime app on Roku, yet here I have with Amazon Prime. I can't even talk to you right now.
Well, I'm not even sure what you're talking about as far as the Honor Club app, because there isn't an Amazon app for Honor Club.
No, there isn't. So what I have to do is I have to use the Amazon Internet app and open it up on there to watch it on my TV.
There's an Amazon Internet app?
Yeah.
What
it's
is
called
that?
Silk.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
And I have to open up this Silk internet browser to get the Ring of Honor, and then it only works if it's logged out of every other. Like, I have to log out of my phone, my laptop. You have to not be logged in. It's the only way I can watch on this Silk app. And then the Silk app only gives me a certain limited amount, like within the last year and a half. It doesn't have the full site. So like this, what we're going to do...
Everything that you're saying right there, it can be summed up in one simple phrase.
Ring of Honor sucks?
No, it sucks to be you.
Oh. Well, yeah, there's that too. And here you go dogging me right before Christmas, man.
Hey, if you... I would be happy to sympathize with you if you didn't give a shit that you spoiled me on that fucking match last week. So.
I didn't spoil you on anything.
Yes, you did. You told me that fucking lost her championship to overpushed woman chick.
Admit it, you weren't going to watch it anyway.
If I'd known the match was happening, I would have watched it.
That's the thing. Would you have known it was happening if I didn't even tell you?
You just told me it was happening without telling me.
So there, I can ruin it because I told you it was happening.
No.
Yes.
Telling me what happened during a match or what the result is ruins it, not just that a match is happening.
Twitter, let me know if I have the right to ruin it if I let him know it happens.
What?
There you go. We'll get the final. We'll get the final say. Our Twitter people will chime in, and they will more than likely agree with you. But right now, I don't care.
I'm not following Twitter right now because I don't want to see any spoilers for the Star Wars movie.
I already told you the bad guy wins.
I already told you to shut the fuck up.
It's a Disney movie, for Christ's sake. It's a Disney movie at the end of the trilogy. You already know what is happening.
No, I don't.
You know damn well who the last Skywalker is. You know who's going to win. It's a Disney movie, for Christ's sake.
All right, shut up and let's move on.
I knew who was winning this the second I heard Disney bought the damn...
Are we going to keep the show going or are you going to hang up?
Well, I don't know. I mean, kind of want to keep it going.
Then shut up.
Hey, fine.
And move on.
What?
All right. So,
we got to talk about this throwback show. Holy shit. That is the way to do a throwback show.
speaking of which, who the hell is this Alexia chick you were talking about? Alexia Nicole.
I don't know.
No.
She's somebody on Impact, and she is hot as blazes.
She's somebody on Impact.
Yeah, she's someone from the Knockouts division.
I can honestly say I don't remember ever seeing her before.
I didn't know who she was either until this throwback show. And then I saw her on there, and I was like, okay, I got to find out more about this chick. And when I looked her up, I'm like, okay, I need to know everything about her that there is to know. She is stunning.
All right, so was she one of the chicks with? Was she that chick that was out there with?
She was with Tessa and Havoc and all them.
Tessa
in that,
and,
whatever that stable was that they had, where they, yeah.
All right, so she was the little chick. Okay.
Yeah, she was.
All right.
One of the Rough Riders.
All right, so the least impressive of the Rough Riders is the one that you think is the hottest thing in the history of the world.
The smallest, prettiest, and smallest and prettiest one.
Yeah, I'm not into small.
Well, I know, but when you're looking at Havoc and Jordan Grace, everyone is small. I'm small next to Havoc.
You're barely small next to a crane, dude.
And I'm small next to Havoc. That's the worst part. No, I'm seriously. Look her up right now. Alexia Nicole. She's one of the newer knockouts. She's actually, if I remember seeing the last Impact right, she's the one challenging Taya Valkyrie for the title.
Alexia Nicole. Okay.
And for those of you at home, this is our Google portion of the show where we are going to be quiet while we look up pictures. I'm telling you, this chick is smoking.
I don't see she's anything special, dude.
Ah, man. I don't know what to say to you anymore.
She's
then.
Skinny. She barely has any breasts. She has no hips.
You're clearly not looking at the pictures I'm looking at. I'm just saying. Oh, wait. She's a porn star.
Well, there
okay,
you go.
No, she wasn't. No, sorry, my bad. I read that wrong.
It said, I wish she was a porn star. And Jeff's like, oh, she's a porn star.
Kind of.
Yeah, so anyway.
Anyway, she's my new favorite. She's 4'11". She's 108 pounds. How can you go wrong with that?
Yeah, you enjoy her, dude, because I have no use for her.
Ah, so painful. Anyway, what was I looking up? Oh yeah, this IPWF.
Yeah, you told me last week that was a real organization. It was never a real organization.
I thought it was. There was something I saw about it where it was like this was a real federation in Canada that went like bankrupt in the mid 80s. Got bought up by Stampede.
No, it did not.
I'm Googling right now. I hate you. I'm Googling.
I did think it was great though that Don Callis was using the name Sexton Hardcastle.
Everything about this show was great.
Right,
the way that
for him to use Edge's original wrestler name as his name on that show, I thought was great.
Well, and just everything about it was great. The fact that
so technically Edge is a former IPWF World Heavyweight Champion because he said Sexton Hardcastle was a former world champion there.
Possibly. The one thing I like the most about it is this was an 1983, 84 throwback show.
Yeah.
And Johnny Swinger came out as Johnny Swinger. Because he's already 80s.
Right.
I thought that was amazing.
And I thought it was great that Tessa Blanchard invented the DDT on this show.
Yep. And Sonny Sanders was the Jim Cornette character that Sami Callihan played. Julian Cumberbund was
Wait, was her name Blanche Hardbody? Is that what her name was?
I'll look it up here. I don't
something.
think. No, it doesn't sound familiar.
Which means it was probably absolutely correct.
More than likely, yeah. And I'm going to go back. I'm going to have to go back and look at some of the messages I sent you throughout this, because there was some stuff that just blew me away. Like DJ Too Large Moose in his match against Captain Joystick was one of the greatest things I've ever seen.
It was, and here's the thing. DJ Too Large is the best I've ever seen Moose be. That's what Moose's character should be right now, is DJ Too Large.
That was another thing.
It was supposed to be a parody, but if they went with that as his character right now, that would be just awesome to me.
One of the things I wanted to say about this entire card was it was nice seeing everybody come out of who they were. They weren't. I don't think there was a single person on this outside of Johnny Swinger that actually played who they really were, and I thought it was great to watch all of these characters be something completely different. Like I absolutely loved. Can't think of his name now. The dude from the north.
Tim Burr?
No, seriously. The guy that played Julian Cumberbund. Yeah, Ethan Page.
Yeah.
I thought he was amazing.
Wrestlers, you can't think of his name. That's great. Anyway,
I can barely think of my name most nights, dude. But Julian Cumberbund, I thought, was such an amazing difference from what Ethan Page is, and same thing with the way Sami Callihan played his character, and even just pretty much everybody. Like I loved Eddie Edwards as Colton Hardcastle, as Cowboy Colt McCoy. I thought he was amazing in that. I loved those guys. I loved those guys in that 4-way match against the women. Tim Burr, Josh Alexander was such a great character. And then you had
Strack.
Yep, Ray Strack went, and Phil Game and Jim Nysom, which it was the Rascals. I thought was great. And then you had, but yeah, Ray Strack was my favorite, and I really loved Tim Burr and his whole lumberjack gimmick. And then, of course, the Rough Riders I thought were amazing, but I might have been looking too much at Alexia and Nicole during that, so I can't really say much. I loved the fact that Jazzy Fitbody was out there, and Callis got in his jokes to Giuseppe about how he doesn't know what a fit body is and all this stuff. He had to get in his Madison Rain jokes, which I thought was brilliant.
Yeah,
just brilliantly
done. The best part about that was that he said, I think we should call you Jazzy Fit Buddy also Giuseppe, but we would take the F out and put an SH in front of the IT.
Fish body.
No, shit body.
Oh, shit body.
And then Giuseppe's like, let me write that out. You can't say that!
There was so much greatness out of this commentary team, and just literally everything. Like I remember messaging you, but there was half of what I messaged you that I remember, like that marker bit when the off-camera guys just kept handing Josh markers and he didn't know what to do with it. Was such great TV. And then what's some of the other stuff? I gotta find the message I sent you.
I think I totally missed that marker part you're talking about.
Oh, there was a part where they had the hard camera on Giuseppe and Hardin Sex Castle, and Sexton Hardcastle and Giuseppe.
Hardin Sex Castle.
Shut up! I'm bad with names.
Better.
Anyway, so they have the hard camera on them, and Giuseppe asks for a microphone. And he puts down his cigar, and he asks for a pen to write with. And he puts down his cigar, and he grabs a marker and sets it down. And then throughout the next 3 or 4 minutes of the spot, whoever's off camera just keeps handing him markers, and he just keeps taking them, and then hands a bunch of them over to Don Callis and said, "Here you go, have some markers." And then the guy just keeps handing him more markers. I thought that was just fun. It was one of the more fun spots I've seen. Why can't I find these messages? There was so much, and the reason I was messaging you is because I was like, all right, I need to send this to somebody or I'm going to forget.
You know, I was kind of bummed that Rapid Delivery Pete didn't ride a skateboard down to the ring, though.
Well, because that's too new wave. I did like Austin Aries and his punk thing, his little punk gimmick that he did.
Ace Austin.
Or Ace Austin. Jesus Christ. Maybe I need to drink more before the shows. Maybe that's the
I thought it was
problem.
funny that the hard workers were named Oates and Hall.
Right. And what was their when they called in their weights, when they were like weighing in at enough to make the ladies to drive the ladies crazy.
Yeah.
It was one of the best things
I think it was something like that.
Yeah, that was amazing. That was so much fun. That might have been the best line I've ever. That beats out cranberry juice. That the private party uses. Fuck, I'm pissed. I don't know where these are.
What's going on here? My dog's growling at something.
Probably you. Did we watch this before? Okay, here it is. All right. I remember, seriously, Falaba's partner was D'Lo. Was it just me, or did D'Lo look as big as Falaba?
He did,
if not bigger.
He's gained a lot of weight, no question.
Holy shit, he has. It's like almost 2 D'Los.
I'll be right back. You hang on the show for a minute.
I can't do this. You know I'm terrible at the play-by-play thing. So I guess I'm here to entertain y'all. So, anyway, anyone that needs to know anything, we need to look up Alexia Nicole, and we need to spam Zanman's Twitter, and it's at Zanman, ZANMANLOP. Spam him with Alexia Nicole pictures. That is what I'm asking of everybody out there right now. That's what we need to have happen. She is hot as hell, and he doesn't see it. So, besides that, going back to the Josh Matthews bit, I loved the whole... There was everything about this show I really loved, especially the market bit was hilarious. The fact that the Madison Rain wife jokes kept continuing with him talking to Josh about the Jazzy Fit body and all that stuff. And this easily could have been my favorite show. If we were going to pick favorite shows of the year, this one easily could have been it. There was so much greatness in all of this show. And the fact that even people like Jake Christ was never on there, and you had that awful bit from Rhino being a butcher in the back, and there was some badness, but overall I felt like this was my favorite. This is how you do throwback shows, and this is what I want NWA to actually notice, is if you're going to do a throwback show, you do it like this, and then you move on to the way wrestling is in the 90s, because they have really overdone their throwback studio show.
I'm back now.
All right, I figured you were.
All right. Yeah, it was great. I mean, I think that Impact took what WWE started with their YouTube shows on the Southpaw Wrestling Federation, or whatever the hell that was called, and they just kind of they emphasized it into an actual wrestling show rather than just those things.
Well, and not just that. I mean, you look at NWA, and I literally just said this. NWA is doing a modern version of a throwback show. If you're going to do a throwback show, go balls in like they did here on Impact. Just do it, and do it all out. Have the bad wrestling, have the innovative moves, which was what a Hurricane it's a DDT, was an innovative move on this show. If you're going to do it, go all in. Don't just do this, hey, we're a throwback show doing a studio audience, and then run out the modern day wrestlers. It's just not working. And I think that might be, when I look back at what NWA is doing, I think it's more the way they're presenting their talent and the way they're presenting the show that's driving me off of it, as opposed to the fact that they are not as good. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, they do have guys that are old school type guys too. Like Nick Aldis is an old school type wrestler.
Yeah.
James Storm is mostly an old school type wrestler. Um,
So is Colt and
so it's cool. And I was going to say Trevor Murdoch definitely fits that
yeah.
school. You know.
And of Ken Anderson, I mean, they do have a lot of old school wrestlers, but at the same point.
Oh, and don't forget the greatest tag team of all time, the Rock and Roll Express.
All right, I'm done with the show. Just do it. Whatever. I can't talk anymore. You just sucked all the wind out of my sails. No, I mean, they do have a lot of an old school wrestling feel, and I'm okay with that. It's the presentation that's becoming the issue. And I get it. Corgan can't afford to have the type of firework displays and video packages that WWF has, or even AEW, but he doesn't need to. What he needs to do is he needs to present the show in a way that is more modern. And stop playing off the fact that these guys are all old school wrestlers, which they are. I mean, even Eli Drake, to an extent, is an old school wrestler. And that's fine. Have your old school wrestling. Just beef up the presentation a little bit. And I think you're going to get a whole lot more out of that show than you do.
Yeah, but they pretty much made themselves dead to me when they put that card together for that pay-per-view.
When they put the Rock and Roll Express in a pay-per-view in 2019, they were dead to me.
Well, I was also, I still haven't watched the match. I do have the show. I do plan on watching at least the main event eventually, but it did really bug the shit out of me that James Storm wrestled a match to get a shot at the championship. He lost the match, but he still got a shot at the championship.
I can't even bring myself to download the show to watch it, to be honest with you. The more and more I thought about it, and the more I looked at it, the only match that I actually cared about was Eli Drake and Ken Anderson. And then I looked back at the way the build was for that, and it was all built off of their mic skills. And then Anderson would come up and do his little Anderson gimmick, and that was the extent of it. It's like I wanted to see these two go off on a couple of month mic battle, just back and forth mic work, and then lead it into a match. Instead, they kind of just fumbled their way into this match, and that became a marquee match on the show. And it was honestly the only match I wanted to see, because it was the only match where I felt like the talent actually was there for the entire match. As much as I love James Storm, I've seen Aldis versus Storm. I don't want to see it again.
No, I mean, I think that, when you have, they've been building really, if you think about it, the fact that Aldis, introduced Eli Drake into the company back at the ROH, was it the anniversary show? Was the ROH anniversary show he did that? I mean, really, it seems like all these years they've been setting up for Aldis, all these months they've been setting up for Aldis versus Drake. And that should have been the main event of their first, pay-per-view, separated from ROH or, on their own completely. And instead, they make this weird James Storm match where when Storm had already, lost the opportunity to wrestle for that championship. It was just so weird.
Well, and then
it really threw me off, and it says a lot about that organization that. A Ken Anderson match in 2019 was what you're looking the most forward to.
Exactly. And that's exactly. And that's really sad. And we can't look past the fact that Marty Scurll is now an NWA member.
What?
He showed up on the last show. The villain is now NWA. It was the last thing I saw. I haven't watched the show, so I can't really say for sure. But from what I saw, is Marty Scurll is now NWA. Did I lose you? You gone?
I'm back now.
Just hang up on that. I wouldn't have blamed you.
No, I did not hang up on you. Okay, so I know Scurll showed up on the last show, but he doesn't actually sign with them, did he?
Let me see here. I might need to look it up here, but I know he showed up on the show, and I thought it was more so as his introduction than it was anything else. Let me see here.
Because that'd be a really weird choice when when he's got NXT and AEW going after him, and he signs with and ROH going after him, and he decides to sign with NWA. That'd be so weird.
Okay, despite appearing for Ring of Honor and NWA last week, Searle is currently a free agent.
Okay.
Oh, one of several Ring of Honor stars whose contracts are expiring, along with Cobb, Bandito, Brody King. Oh, Jesus Christ, they're going to get cleared out again. This promotion is dying a slow death. Because now, Cobb, Bandito, and Shane Taylor, and then Tracy Williams throughout the year, and Brody King, who I think is an absolute star. These are all guys that are now on their way out of Ring of Honor, too.
Brody King should be snapped up by AEW and put in that stable with MJF.
In a heartbeat. Brody King is one of the most underrated talents out there right now.
Absolutely. He's big, he's fast, he's strong, he's a technical wrestler. He really is. He really could be like the next Brock Lesnar, like in 2002. Not the current Brock Lesnar, but a big guy who's also a technical wrestler.
But he's also got a voice. That's the thing I think puts him ahead of Brock Lesnar. I think he has all the physical skills to be a Brock Lesnar, but I think he also has the mic talent to be something bigger. If you heard him on the Final Battle show and just his mic work when he was filling in as an announcer, and then if you saw some of his bits when he was going to Japan with Marty, looking for the new member of Villain Enterprises, he's got comedic timing. He's great on the mic. Brody King is like my Alex Hammerstone. Like, coming into the year, we're touting Alex Hammerstone as being the next big thing who's got all 5 tools. Mm-hmm. I think Brody King is right there with Hammerstone. I really do. I think those two guys in the next 5... Well, I guess Hammerstone's quite a bit older than King, but I think those guys in the next 4 or 5 years are going to be top-notch stars in the business. Brody King, if anybody can snatch him up now...
Where I would say that Hammerstone has the advantage over Brody King is that Hammerstone knows who he is, and I think Brody King is still King himself as a performer, and that's
he never
ages and the experience, but I think King sometimes does stuff that he shouldn't be doing as a guy his size, whereas I think that Hammerstone wrestles exactly the way he should be wrestling.
Oh, I agree 100%. But I think Brody King is one of those guys that just really needs to find a place somewhere that's going to take care of his talent. I don't think Ring of Honor has done it yet.
No, he needs somebody that will nurture him and get the most out of him. And sadly, that place is honestly the best place for him. Probably is because of his size and because of the guys he'd be able to work with. There probably is NXT. I just really don't want him to go there. I'd love AEW to snatch him up, but I think there's guys there that could also mentor him very well as well. Like Dustin's there, who's 6'6", and I think Dustin could be a great job mentoring him too. And Anderson's working with them, and Dean Malenko's working with them. So while I think that probably Shawn Michaels and Triple H would be the best mentors for him, that doesn't mean I still think AEW has guys that could be great mentors for him.
I think that if he's going to succeed, he needs to go someplace that's going to let him be him. NXT, the WWE mold. He's there, and he's going to be pushed into a Punishment Martinez type role and not given the chance to actually be the voice that I think Brody King can be. And that's the same for Hammerstone. I think if Hammerstone or King were to go to the NXT or WWE, get muted because of the size they bring, because of the size of wrestlers they are, because of how big and talented they are, they're immediately going to get thrown in that Lars Sullivan, Punishment Martinez, Undertaker role where they shut their mouths up and make them just be these big guys. And I think that's a huge mistake when you're looking at guys this size who can actually talk and cut promos too.
Yeah, that's a good point. And it's sad that I'm not watching Hammerstone anymore because I just can't bring myself to putting MLW on anymore.
I'm kind of the same boat, especially after Teddy Hart leaving and MJF. I really like
the last few times I watched it, and I just can't. I mean, I don't know. I mean, they're not the organization that we fell in love with anymore.
No, they're not. They don't have the same. They don't have the same writing. They don't have the same way of building stories like they did. Like as much as I hated the Simon Gotch heel turn, or face, what I'm not really sure what it was, because wasn't Team Filthy kind of heels when Simon Gotch turned on him to a heel faction?
Yes.
So it made Tom Lawler a face by default.
Exactly.
Okay, so as long as I got that, okay. But even the writing that story, Low Key versus Tom Lawler match, was like an 8-month build. They built it over, and it was a slow build. But they built it, and they made Tom Lawler into this top star. And ever since then, ever since he won the belt, that entire company has just gone downhill. And it's sad to see. But you did mention something that I wanted to kind of bring up. You'd mentioned Dustin Rhodes. Now, young wrestlers are going to make mistakes. They just are. That's the way it works.
If you're doing everything perfectly, you're not going to learn anything.
What really annoys me is what has happened this last 5 days. A young, up-and-coming wrestler who is now part of the Dark Order was supposed to punch Dustin in the face, but he took it upon himself, realizing that Dustin was already cut open, didn't want to make it worse than he was. He's a young wrestler going against a legend, future Hall of Famer, and literally a legend in this business. And he didn't want to miss a punch to cause any more damage to Dustin, who was already busted open. So he took a few swings that were a little bit awkward, but because they were caught on camera, the internet has fucking blown up to the point where you've got people like Randy Orton calling out AEW and the fact that they're letting this guy on TV, and even Dustin talking about how he needs to learn to throw a punch. It's like, let's fucking relax a little bit. If that same thing had happened in 1980, it would have been brushed under the rug. But because we're in the internet community, and I don't know if you know what I'm even talking about.
I have no idea.
But the end of the night from from Dynamite last night, when I've been watching some WCW this week, so forgive me. But the end of Dynamite, when Dark Order hit the ring and was fighting everybody, and then Dustin came out. Dustin got cut open, and there was a spot where the little minions or creepers or whatever they are were attacking all of the wrestlers, and one of these really just young kid. I mean, he's not that far in the business. He barely has a name. He was wearing a mask, for Christ's sake, and he was on top of Dustin, and he was throwing punches that were clearly missing Dustin and hitting the ring instead of hitting Dustin.
Okay.
And the camera just happened to catch it. It just happened to be the hard angle camera. And, somewhat, a lot of that's on the AEW. If you see that happening, you go move off of it. You don't sit on it for 6 or 7 punches. You go, holy shit, he's fucked up. Let's move. So part of that's on the AEW and their camera work. But the fact that everybody has just gone apeshit about this is embarrassing. Just absolutely embarrassing. It's been all over Twitter. It's been a lot of mainstream wrestlers for WWE, of course, because they just want to trash AEW. But the most prominent was Randy Orton, saying that this guy is shit and he should never be allowed on TV again, basically, until he learns to throw a punch. And then Dustin even came out and said, look, you got to learn how to throw a punch. And the guy came out and what he said is, he goes, look, Dustin was cut open. This dude's a legend. I'm not going to make shit worse. So I made a mistake and didn't hit him like I probably should have. But it's just like, at some point we need to let this shit go. We are nitpicking to that point. We all know that this shit is fake. We all know they throw punches that do not connect, or if they do connect, they get pulled so quickly that you don't notice them. Give this kid a break. Don't jump on his shit just because he thought that hitting a legend in the face when the legend was bleeding was a bad idea.
Amen.
It's just been annoying me for like 4 days, so I'm glad I actually got to say something about it.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I mean, I like I said, I didn't even know that was going on because I'm not a social media guy like you are.
My Twitter's been lighting up, so people have been messaging me going, what do you think of this? What do you think of this? I think it's shit. Get off this kid's shit. Randy, you were a young kid once too. And I saw a few...
Twitter doesn't exist. Twitter does not exist for me for the next week or so.
Well, I know, but Randy Orton, when Randy Orton was this kid's age, as far as business-wise goes, Randy Orton was not even on national television yet. He was making botches in OVW. And there were quite a few times in that first couple of years, even when he was with Evolution beginning his rise, where he fucked up a few things. Randy Orton's not been perfect. And for him to come out and call out another wrestler like that, honestly, that made me... I lost a lot more respect for Randy Orton. And you know me, I've been one of his biggest touters for the last 5 years. I mean, Randy Orton to me has been a god because of how great he's been over his career. And I've never felt like he's gotten his just due. But this last couple of things he's pulled, his calling out Tony Khan, and now this, it's like, Randy, get off your high horse. You've made mistakes as a kid, too.
You do realize that Randy Orton's always been a bit of a dick, right?
No, he's an asshole. He's always been an asshole as a personal guy, but his character and the way that he's been able to build storylines and stuff, and some of the performances when he's motivated, is some of the best I've ever seen. He's a future Hall of Famer, and he's a guy that has always been on point when he wants to be. That's the key point, when he wants to be. He has done some shit, too, that has not been the greatest ever. But it just annoys me to watch a guy like Randy Orton, who should be supporting the young guys in the business, because he's at the tail end of his career. Randy Orton's not the kind of guy that, let's face it, all the people that he came up with, they're all gone. Batista, gone, going to the Hall of Fame. Cena hasn't been around for years. Edge, I know he's making a comeback, but he can't wrestle anymore. Yeah, and he hasn't been on TV prominently in years. And these are all the guys that Orton came up with, and all these guys are gone. Orton's the last guy that's still wrestling on a consistent basis. So he's got to know his time has passed. But for him to bury the next generation the way that he's been lately has made me lose all respect for this guy who I've worshipped. I don't want to say worshipped because that's childish, but a guy that I have legitimately stuck up for years. To watch him act this way has been really, really disheartening.
Yeah, my point was simply that he's always been a bit of a dick that way. So I mean, I don't understand why him acting like a dick when he's been a dick all these years would make you feel that way. He just has social media now and a target outside the WWE to put it on. Is all.
Well, no, I know.
He's
I get
been a
it.
dick in the locker room. He's been a dick to people on airplanes. He's been a dick to people backstage.
Yeah, part of that was me.
He wasn't ever going to be a dick to Impact because Impact was beneath WWE. He wasn't ever going to be a dick to Ring of Honor or, But I mean now people like Seth Rollins and Randy Orton, because AEW is prominent, because NJPW is prominent, they're just a dick to those wrestlers because they can be and because they're the competition.
Yeah, that's true. I get that. I really do. And I understand that. I understand where you're coming from. It's just because he's a guy that he was that guy when AJ Styles was coming up that they were like my 1 and 2. and it depended on the week which one was better than the other. But they were legitimately my 1 and 2 wrestlers every single week. And for me, it's a little bit painful for this guy that I've actually had respect for. Like, I love Austin Aries. I think he's an amazing, amazing talent. I actually have more respect right now for Austin Aries than I ever had before, because at least Austin Aries doesn't ever hide the fact that he's a dick. Randy Orton hid behind kayfabe for so long that he was just, I just don't break character when I'm in public. I just don't break. No, you're a dick, dude. Own it. Austin Aries owns it, and he's one of my favorites. You're a dick in real life. Sorry, got a lot of control there.
It's hard to disagree with, my friend.
Why? Because it's true.
Yeah, it is. I mean, if you're an asshole, you're an asshole.
Yeah, and own it. Who cares? You're an asshole. You make millions of dollars. You make more money than I will ever think of making. You're known the world over. People love you. People can love you for what you do without loving you as a person. Triple H has proven that time. Just own the fact that you're an asshole. And I'm fine with you.
Yeah.
We kind of went all over the place here, didn't we?
We did.
And we never actually really got to the point that I wanted to make.
Which is?
As far as who my top performers were this year. Because it's like, we kind of mentioned at the beginning that we've been all over the map this year. Like last year, we were stuck on New Japan. We were stuck on Ring of Honor. Kind of a little bit stuck on NXT. We watched a lot of Impact. So we kind of had a narrow brand of who we liked. Coming into this year, we started with MLW. I was watching Defiant. There's NJPW. There was Impact. There was NWA. There was Ring of Honor. There was, we went a little bit off on NWA of Hollywood and what was the other one? Evolve. We spent a little time on.
Yeah.
So this year it's been a little bit harder to, like you said, to compile those lists like we did last year. And we actually had one of our faithful listeners ask us if we were going to do a list this year, if we were going to break down our best matches and all this stuff. I don't know that we can. Seriously, because there's been so much going on. But if I had to off the top of my head, and I'm going to go maybe top 6, 7, 8, maybe even 10 wrestlers of the year, and not in really any order. But I think these are the guys that have had amazing years that really need to get called out. I think Jay White has had an amazing year. We've already talked about Sami Callihan. And Jay White, I mean, we go for days about all the great stuff he's done. Ospreay. In the ring, Ospreay, I don't know that there's been anybody better this entire year than Will Ospreay. El Phantasmo had such a great second half of the year, and he was great when he was in Defiant. His character wasn't as fine-tuned, but once he hit Bullet Club and hit that role, has there been a better cruiserweight than El Phantasmo?
Besides Ospreay, probably not.
And then, how many other guys were there? Matt Taven had a great year. I thought MJF had a great year. In performances, Darby Allin has come out of nowhere to really become one of the top guys in the business. There's been, and of course we've always got our Adam Cole and Johnny Garganos and people like that. I mean, who would you put in a top 5 this year? I kind of just ran through like 8 or 9 people that I would put in a top 5.
Wow, who did I put in the top 5 this year? Okay,
Ciampa. Ciampa, had he not gotten injured?
Yeah, if he had not gotten injured, maybe, but he did. So,
right.
So who did I put in the top 5 this year? Sami Callihan.
Number 1. That's both you and mine. That's our number 1.
Yeah. Cody. It's tough because he hasn't wrestled a lot of this year, but at the same time, he's been in some of the best matches this year.
Yeah, he's kind of right on that border for me right now. There's like 4 guys that are right on that border that it's hard for me to pick a clear number 5. I mean, for me, Sammy, Osprey, White, and El Phantasmo, that's my 1 through 4.
Yeah.
They've just been so good.
Osprey's probably my number 2. Just because of what he did beginning of the year, you know. I mean,
Right.
It's hard to put him anywhere outside the top 2.
And not just from what he did the beginning of the year, but that match he had against Naito could go down as one of my favorite matches of the year. The way those two, yeah, when he won the title,
Osprey against Naito.
No, I'm sorry. I was thinking White. Sorry, my bad.
Okay.
My bad. That's on me. Sorry. I was thinking Jay White because Jay White's my number 3 guy, hands down.
Yeah, White's been great. I've been. Now you're probably gonna kill me for this, but you know he had such a great run in the New Japan Cup. He had great matches against Okada this year, and he had that fantastic match against Will Ospreay in the G1, and I've got to go with Sonata.
He's in that cusp. He's like I've got like 4 or 5 guys that are right there for me for number 5.
Yeah,
I find it hard. I mean, my top 3 right now are set in stone. As far as in no particular order, it could change depending on my mood. But Osprey, White, and Sami Callihan, mm-hmm. I can't think of 3 better guys. 3 guys have had better years than those 3. Start to finish years.
Yeah, Jay White is probably my number 3 guy. You know, I mean, I'm surprised you don't have Osprey in your top 3, but you know,
I just did. He's my. Those are my top 3, kind of depending on my mood order. Okay. It's Callahan, it's Osprey, and it's Jay White.
I must have misheard you. I thought you said something else.
I honestly can't think of who I would put in that top 3 position. I think Taven and MJF had a chance at it, but I think they both had issues that have got them now hovering around my number 5 spot. But for me, there's been nobody better, plain and simple, nobody better than Osprey, then Sami Callihan, and then Jay White throughout the entire year from start to finish.
Yeah, so I'm probably gonna, and I would probably have Cody at my number 4. And I'm trying to think who I have at number 5 right now. Or no, number 5 would be Sonata for me. So that's what it is. That's what my list I think is gonna be. And I know I'm a bit of a homer with the Sonata pick, but I honestly think that he's given me some of my most emotionally satisfying moments this year in professional wrestling. Against Sonata, against Suzuki, against Zack Sabre Jr. And to me, I mean, yes, he's one of my favorite wrestlers, but at the same time, I've been so emotionally involved in those matches that he had that I can't see where I'd pick anybody else ahead of him.
See, so for you and I, the top 3 is kind of set in stone.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got Sammy at that solid number 1, both of us. There's been nobody better over the last 12 months. For me, and I don't know if it's the same for you, but either or 2 or 3, it's Osprey and Jay White. Those guys are interchangeable for that 2 and 3 spot. Osprey has put on some of the greatest matches I've seen this year. So has White. White may have the edge on character development, but I felt like some of the stuff Osprey has done in developing his character has been just nails as well. So it's hard for me to pick either one over the other.
So here's why it's Osprey for me over White. So before you move on.
Okay.
Because he was a dominant force in the Super J, in the what the hell is it called? The Best of the Super Juniors. He had those outstanding tag matches where it was him and Robbie Eagles taking on El Phantasmo and Ishimori.
Okay. Yep, I agree.
And then he was also he also ruled his way right after the G1 or right after the Best of the Super Juniors through the G1. I don't think that can be discounted. And so just because I think that the variety that he was in, and how well he was against all manner of competition, he edges out White for me.
See, and for me, they're interchangeable depending on my mood.
Mm-hmm.
I see where you're coming from with Ospreay. I see what you're saying with him, and I agree 100%. But for me, those two are interchangeable simply because the fact that Jay White was able to come into the G1 the way that he did and just dominate it. Yeah, he started off rough, but he ran on a tear that brought him to the finals. Where Ospreay just never got it clicking during the G1. And that was kind of disappointing because of the way they were setting him up. Plus, I've really liked the way... The difference between American television and Japanese is the fact that American heels can go out there and cut a 5-minute promo and put themselves over that way. Jay White does not have that ability in Japan. He's not able to go out there and stand in the middle of the ring and cut a 5-minute promo that puts him over. The only way he ever gets that promo time is if he wins the main event of a major pay-per-view or major show. Then he gets to stand in the ring, cut a promo like he did on Goto. But for the most part, that's the one thing about Japan that really doesn't have the... I don't know what the word is. Advantage that American television does for American audiences. Where Jay White has excelled ahead of Ospreay, I think, is the way that Jay White has been able to build his character throughout matches. Ospreay just goes out there and he does his storytelling. He does his phenomenal moveset. He has become one of the better storytellers, in-ring storytellers I've ever seen without using his voice. But Jay White can come in there and turn a match into something completely different just by the way he talks to his opponent. And I think that might be the one reason why Jay White might move into that number 2 spot for me and move Ospreay to number 3. But ultimately, those top 3 are the same for both you and I. It's Callahan, White, and Ospreay.
Okay, yeah, I totally see where you're coming from with that, and I do agree that that White has the ability both ways to turn a match around, and I think that he just knows his character so well that that there's times where you forget that you're watching a fake performance because he is so good in there. And I think exactly. That's what you and I like so much about that Naito Jay White matches. Both guys were so deeply involved in their characters, and they were so much. You're watching Naito versus White, the characters, not Naito versus White, the wrestlers. And I think that's why that match is going to remain in my top 5 of the year.
Absolutely, and I'd be hard pressed to find that not being my number 1. If I were to sit down and actually think about it and have the time like we did last year to sit down and go, okay, I'm going to watch all these matches, I'm going to figure it out, I'd have a hard time not having that at my number 1. And that's plain and simple.
It's not mine because of how good Dustin and Cody were.
Dustin and Cody was such an emotional match, but there was not the character development out of the characters like we saw in that Naito versus White match.
If you talk about just bell-to-bell action, I completely agree with you. But if you talk about presentation start, presentation end, then I disagree with you.
And that's what I was just going to say. If you take into account the after or the lead up going in, and you know me, I'm huge on lead up, I'm huge on after fall. I like the whole story when I grade a match. I don't like just look at one match. But with the NJPW, it's a little bit different because you have to look at that one match. You don't have the ability to look at all the promos and the aftermatch speak and all that to really judge a match. You have to look at what happens in that match. But you're right. If I were to look at that whole Dustin versus Cody feud and the tears and everything that happened after the match and all that,
and the throne,
it'd be hard not to say that's my number 1. But for me to just look at the match itself and what came about throughout the match, and even the slight lead up that NJPW gives you, which is matches ahead of time and the little bit afterwards. God, it's hard. That's a tough one. That truly is. That's a really hard one for me to say which one is better. And that's honest to God. I have no clue. I honestly don't. But as far as my number 4 guy goes, and here we go, we're losing signal. But if you're still there, my number 4 guy for me, my number 4 guy is El Phantasmo. And I just think for him, there were so many times that last 4 or 5, maybe even 6 months of the year after he left Defiant and really became part of Bullet Club at NJPW, where I just don't know that there was a better worker on any card he was on than El Phantasmo. He was so incredible in every match he was in, all the way through the Super J Cup, and every match, all those tag matches with him and Ishimori versus what were they called? What'd they call them?
The Birds of Prey.
Yeah, Birds of Prey. Those were so. And I remember watching that one match, and we talked about it, where I felt like Phantasmo literally stole the show. Mm-hmm. When you have guys of that talent. Ospreay, who's my number 2 guy, maybe number 3, depending on my mood, guy of the year. Robbie Eagles, who could easily be a top 10 guy, and Ishimori, who I is probably my favorite junior heavyweight in wrestling right now. So you've got those 3 guys in the ring at one time, and I felt like El Phantasmo stole the show. To me, that really jettisons him up to my number 4 spot.
That match, and I know we haven't gotten to this yet, and I'm not sure if we're going to, because we're so far into the weeds here as far as time goes. But
yeah.
But honestly, there's 3 tag matches this year that are in that running for me as being tag match of the year. But that match you just talked about completely blows away the other 2, to the point where that's like number 1, and the other 2 are like 10 and 11.
Take his tablet away.
I already shut it off.
Okay. Sorry, I'm parenting. Go ahead.
No, I was saying that Robbie Eagles versus Will Ospreay versus Taiji Ishimori and El Phantasmo was so much better than my other 2 top 3 matches of the year that it just blows them completely away. The other ones to me are just to finish this thought, are the ladder war between Girls of Destiny and the Briscoes, and then of course the match at All Out between, what was it called, the Escalara del Muerte or something like that, between the Lucha Bros and the Young Bucks.
So here's, and I'm kind of there with you too, except I would have put those 2 matches, those 2 and 3, I would have put them in the opposite order. I would have put happened at
the Young Bucks versus Lucha Brothers is my number 2.
Yeah, and then the GOD versus Briscoe's match would have been my number 3. But if you look at that, the fact that 2 gimmick matches are behind what those 4 guys put on when they went after, and that was, are you talking about their tag title one or the one before it?
I honestly don't remember which one it was. I think it was the second one, right?
To be honest, I like their first one better. The one where they won the chance to challenge for the tag title. I thought that was a better match. That was the one where I felt like El Phantasmo stole the show. And then when they actually put the belts on the line, I thought was a great match too, but not as good as that first match that they had. And I can't remember where the first match was. Was it Dunkado? Or Duntoku, I mean, sorry.
Wasn't it? No, it was, no, you're right. It was the first match, but it was actually in Great Britain.
Okay, yeah, you're right. Yeah,
it was actually the same night as All Out, but it was on that British show. What was it called? Royal Chase or something?
Right. I think it was Royal Quest.
Royal Quest, that's what it was.
But that one to me was the better of the 2 matches they had. I felt like their tag title match was a little bit drawn out and was more into Ospreay versus Ishimori than the four of them really shining. I felt like the match they had leading up to that, where Eagles got the pin, really was the better of the two matches, and that is my number one match. And then, the fact that there's two gimmick matches, as great as they were, they're still gimmick matches. They had a lot more to work with to make a great match than that one tag match did. So, hands down, that's my tag match of the year. And that's part of the reason why El Phantasmo kind of catapulted to my number 4 spot.
Okay, and then who's your number 5 then?
It's hard to say. There's so many of them out there. There's so many. Like MJF deserves it. Taven deserves it. I felt like Holiday at a few points was easily in my top 10 and could have made a run at it. Brody King has had a great year. I thought Marty Scurll has had a very underrated but great year. I even felt like Flip at some points had a great year, to where he could have possibly backed into my top 10. And then, of course, you've got Darby Allin, who... Is there anybody hotter than Darby Allin right now? Like, literally anybody hotter than Darby Allin?
No,
and then
I listen to some of those names you're saying, and I kind of internally scoff at them, but at the same time, it was so hard for me to come up with the top 5. I guess I can't really ridicule you for any of those guys in the top 5. Although they wouldn't personally be on mine. Like I wouldn't look at Skrull this year and say he's in my top 5 simply because he was mostly in 6-man tags.
But the problem is, but the problem with those guys is who's been better. I want to say
Taven. I totally get, but the rest of the guys
Taven,
you listed, I wouldn't put there.
As much as I've loved Taven, he had a really rough start to the year and a bad end of the year. Like this feud with Vinny and not knowing if he's face or heel, to me, that's a bad end of the year. No matter how horrible his match was or how great he was up until then, after he lost the belt to Roosh, he plummeted to the point where he is now in the mix with people like Flip and Marty and all these guys, where he's not. If we had made this call, say in August, he would have been one of my top 3. The way that he was in Deny or Defy or Deny or whatever that was, Defy or Deny, the way that his performance was there, the way that his performance was in a couple of matches before that and after that, when he was still champ, he was hard pressed to be my heel of the year. But after this whole, after he lost to Roosh, after the way they've kind of buried him, and then when you really look back at his year and the fact that he really didn't start it off strong either, it's hard for me to say that he's a top 5 guy.
Well, no, I disagree. He started off the year very strong, but the problem is that for some reason they decided to hotshot that real world championship angle, which I have no idea why they did that. To me, that should have dragged out the entire year, and it shouldn't have been till Final Battle where he wrestled for the championship, actually.
Yeah, but he never should have wrestled for it against Lethal. He should have wrestled for it against Skrull.
At Final Battle this year, yeah.
Right, exactly. I agree.
And you know what? There's one guy that I mentioned on the periphery, and there's another guy that we didn't mention at all that I think deserved to be mentioned in the rest of the year discussion. One of them is the great Kazuchika Okada, who's always great, and just because he's so great all the time, I think sometimes
he gets overlooked
in these discussions.
To me, he's a lot like a guy like AJ Styles, who at times you overlook him because he's still, Jesus Christ, he's 42 years old and he's still one of the best wrestlers on the planet.
Yep. And the other guy is facing him at Wrestle Kingdom, and that's Kota Ibushi. Kota has been one of the top in-ring performers the entire year. He had the great emotional run through the G1, and he's one of my favorite wrestlers on the planet. Honestly, so I think
I just don't want
to be in that discussion. But he's in my top 10. He just did not make my top 5 because of the emotional attachment I've had to Sonata's matches more than his. He's
and there's
my
a few
number 6 guy though, honestly.
And there's a few other guys that really deserve to be looked at. And it's like Evil has had an amazing year. but because we've kind of been sideswiped by not watching NJPW, we haven't really cashed in on how great of season he's had or a year he's had. And then you look at some other guys from MLW. I thought Teddy Hart had a really strong year for a long time too. I think he's gotten kind of swept under the rug lately, but I think he had a very strong year. Jacob Fatu is another guy who could
Teddy Hart's
easily.
way too spotty for me to ever have in my rest of the year discussion.
You think so?
Yeah, definitely.
Because I think he may have started that way, but I think he really kind of turned a corner around March and started to become a really, really good storyteller. But even said,
moments, but I also think there's sometimes where it's like, okay, so now I did this. Now it's time for me to do this. Now it's time for me to do this. And I think you can see that in his matches.
Yeah, I guess you're right. Jacob Fatu, though, is another guy who has had an amazing year.
He has. But
I
do think that the last couple of months of MLW have kind of made him have downplayed him a little bit in my eyes, just because they've kind of reduced him to having to cheat to win when really he was a dominant force earlier in the year.
Yeah, but a lot of that's like,
bad storytelling.
Yeah, but a lot of that's like, I can't think of the guy's name from MLW who you love, Shane Taylor, where he has been so dominant through most of his matches, but has had the issues towards the end.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
but you didn't hear me mention Shane Taylor as being my top wrestlers on the planet either. So
that's a good point. That's a very good point.
I love him. I think he's great, and I think that he deserves a bigger platform. But I didn't mention him as being, and I probably should have, since he held the ROH TV title for like 8 months or something. You know?
Right.
Another guy that neither one of us mentioned, and he deserves to be in the discussion because he had great matches in the number 2 and number 3 promotions on the planet, and that's Jon Moxley.
Yes, I agree. I agree 100%. As much as I didn't like his whole Mox persona when he came out, the run he had in WWF at the beginning of the year, he put on some decent stuff. And then he's gone out with NJPW, and after he got past that Juice match, put on some great matches with NJPW, especially in the G1. And then has had nothing but goodness in AEW. Even his squash matches that he's had a couple of now have been really, really good. See, and this might be
and he
what
had
we were
maybe
talking.
The greatest hardcore match I've ever seen this year.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And probably a second greatest one too against Bad Boy. Yeah. And then where are we going to put that, which at the time we thought was the greatest hardcore match ever, Sammy against Mance Warner.
That's true too.
You know? And then there was the Eddie.
And actually, you and I both said that the Janela Moxley would have resonated more with us if we hadn't just seen Callahan versus like 5 days before that.
And it wasn't just that one too. Wasn't there the Eddie Edwards versus Callahan that same week? I mean, we had like 3 of them in the same week that could have been the greatest hardcore match we ever saw, but because of Mance and Sammy, they were just like, yeah, we saw that.
Oh, don't forget about Eddie Edwards versus Killer Cross in the first Blood match,
which was an amazing match too. I mean, it's hard because we've watched so many promotions this year that, yes, I can give you my top 3. I can give you a guy who I think is a front runner for my 4 spot, Nel Phantasmo. But outside of that, there's been so many great performances this year. It's hard to come up with a number 5. Darby Allin has been amazing, absolutely amazing in everything he's done. You've had Moxley, who is a top-notch guy. Cody, who has put on great matches. The Bucks, either one of those two. You know, where last year Matt was our wrestler of the year, I think this year Jeff has had an equally as impressive year as Matt did last year. You know, and then you look at some of the... Yeah, Nick. Jeez, why do we do that?
Well, I just want to make
you
sure
and I do that. Why do we do that?
Actually, because you said it like 3 times in the same sentence. I was like, wait, are you talking about Nick Jackson or Jeff Hardy? So.
No, you and I both do that too. We do, it's Matt and Nick, or it's Matt and Jeff, and for some reason both you and I do that, and that's a testament to Jeff too, because he is really the Jeff Hardy of the group. But Jeff Hardy is a Hall of Famer, so
yeah.
But I mean, there's just so many guys in that top bracket, or in that that could easily slot into that fifth spot. And that's just because we've watched so many good wrestlers throughout this year.
Yeah, absolutely.
And have maybe watched too many wrestlers throughout this year. That's why we can't pick one.
And I realize that we're already desperately over time, but I do want to ask you this, because I know
desperately
that
over time. Remember when we used to go like 2.5 hours?
I do, but we didn't used to do a second show that night too.
That's fair enough. Fair enough.
Which we might end up scrapping now. Anyway.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this, because I know that there was a point earlier this year when I knew for sure what was going to be your feud of the year, and then they kind of blew it with their blow off match, and I think that because I think you hated it as much as I did. So, since obviously Adam Cole versus Johnny Gargano is out the window, what is your feud of the year?
God, that's hard. Because, like I said, for so long it was Cole versus Gargano.
Right.
That last match was so bad. And then Gargano getting hurt and Cole kind of moving on to really nothing. I mean, what's he feuding against now? Balor? I don't even know.
I don't know either.
You got the Inner Circle versus the Elite, which could be up there, but the fact that half the Elite doesn't give a shit is disturbing. Because you've got the Inner Circle right now against Dustin.
It's also only been going on for a couple of months. I mean, it's not like it's had time to fester or anything like that.
But if you think about it, is there really anybody in the Elite that even cares? Cody's moved on now. Him and Darby are going up against Blade and Bunny or Bruiser or whatever the hell they are. And you've got the Bucks and Cody pretty much, or the Bucks and Dustin against the Elite. Paige and Omega, I think they're feuding against each other. So there really is no Elite versus Inner Circle, is there? So, God, feud of the year. Maybe Tessa versus Sammy?
See, and that's one thing that I've been thinking of is Tessa versus Sammy. So,
I mean, I don't know where else to go with that. I mean, you could maybe say White versus Naito, but was Naito versus Kushida a better feud?
Was Kushida versus who?
Naito
and Kushida? Or Ibushi?
Dude, they almost killed each other at the beginning of this year.
Ibushi.
Oh, Ibushi. I'm sorry. Yeah, Ibushi.
Yeah, so here's my thing is I was thinking Sammy versus Tessa also. But then I think Sammy's also in another front runner for feud of the year with Mance Warner.
That wasn't a feud with Mance Warner though. It was a feud against Promociones de Losado.
It was, but if you remember, they started off as enemies against each other, but
then loved each other after one match, though.
And so I mean, even if you want to call it storyline of the year versus instead of feud of the year, it's still definitely a front runner there because Mance did end up being the one that knocked him out of the promotion, even though he didn't want to.
Yeah.
And then you've got, like you said, Naito versus Ibushi. And then I think you also have to put in there a series of matches that I mentioned earlier, and that's Sonata versus Okada.
Is that really a feud, though?
Well, it was a series of matches where there's high stakes on the line every single time, and every one of the matches was 4.5 to 5 stars.
Yeah, that's true.
They wrestled each other in the Japan Cup finals. They wrestled each other for the ROH World Championship. and at Dontaku, and then they wrestled each other for the in the G1, where Sonata finally got his victory after 7 losses.
I mean, another feud that we have to really pay close attention.
And don't forget that Okada, whether mockingly or not, said that Sonata was his arch rival.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say another feud that we have to really pay attention to, and this happened in Japan too, is Birds of Prey versus Bullet Club.
Yep.
I mean, they had a good 2 to 3 match feud as a tag team, and then you wrap in all of the when it was Eagles versus Ospreay that actually turned to Eagles, and then you had all those feuds with Ospreay against El Phantasmo and Ishimori. That was a really good feud this year too.
Well, there's also 2 other tag feuds we should mention then too: the Briscoes versus God,
and the Bucks versus Lucha Bros.
Yep, that's the other one.
Both those were great too. God, feud of the year would be amazing to figure out. We would have to literally watch those over again though too, and I don't know if I have the time for that.
I'm talking about Ed because of what he did for both individuals. I'm gonna anoint Sammy versus Tessa.
I have to, only because, like you said, what it did for both of them. Because I think Sammy is right now one of the top draws in the business, and I think a lot of that is because, not just because of the way or because of the feud he had with Tessa, but the way he handled that feud, not only in a wrestling aspect, but also in a just the way the world perceives it. I just think he was nails on all of that.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And also, I mean, the other thing is with that feud is that now when you see Tessa against a guy, like even against, what's his name? Now I can't think of his name. Madman Fulton. You don't think anything of it. I mean, you don't look at that as a woman versus a man. You look at it as Tessa Blanchard against Madman Fulton. You know? And a lot of that, I still bring back to the way that Sammy ended that match, the way that match was done throughout, where Sammy and Tessa really gelled in a way that made each other look like equals. Yeah. This wasn't a Medusa versus Evan Courageous match from WCW in 2001. Where it was just a joke. This wasn't Eric Young in a tag team match against women. This was a legitimate match. Those two went out and nobody pulled a punch. Nobody felt sorry when they hit the other one. They went out and they acted like 2 equals throughout the entire match, and because of that, it put both of them over. Yeah, I think it started with that feud between Sammy and Tessa, and I think it continued with Tommy Dreamer's endorsement, and then with her beating Brian Cage cleanly in the middle of the ring. You know,
right?
And speaking of Brian Cage, you know, if we had an award for disappointments of the year, I think
Brian Cage
should be up there with me. For me. I mean, he came into the year red hot. You know, he won the world title red hot, but then that injury, being a lame duck champion. Beating Sami Callihan at Bound for Glory when he really had no business winning that match. I mean, Brian Cage right now, he's so low right now as far as, first of all, my respect for him, but also like where he is, like he's the former world champion, and I feel like he is 10 victories away from getting a shot at the championship. You know, I mean, he's sunk down that low for me in my eyes as in the rankings in that promotion.
Fuck, I just had another one that was up there.
For falling?
For disappointments.
Okay.
God, I can't think of who it was now. Oh, Tom Lawler.
Yeah?
Coming into the year, he won the title in February. We thought that Tom Lawler was going to be the greatest thing ever. Has anyone fallen farther than Tom Lawler? I mean, you talked about Brian Cage. Brian Cage had a huge run as X Division champion before he became, and got hurt by Elgin and never amounted to anything since. But Tom Lawler, seriously, he had the company on his back, and he dropped the ball.
Yeah, he was terrible. He was terrible. Like, his character was terrible as champion.
And it took like 5 different runs. There was right after he won the belt, he was a drunk who was at strip clubs. And then next week, he's a pretty boy again. And then next week, he might be a bad guy, but we're not sure. It took so many different changes that if I were to put a guy at the top of, oh my God, you really fucked up your spot, it would be Tom Lawler.
Yeah, that's totally fair. I'm trying to think if there's anybody else that I would put in that category right now.
Out of the promotions that we watched, and there were guys that really didn't amount to what we wanted to, but it wasn't their fault. Like, I can't blame Taven or Skrull for ending the year the way they did. That wasn't on them. That was on their promotions. Same thing with Tanahashi. Tanahashi came in red hot, and he ended where he did. Is that his fault, or is the fact that the promotion just was like, you know what, we're not India anymore?
Yeah, well, I mean, you and I both have serious questions about the first 4 months of world title booking for NJPW.
Well, yeah. Should have stayed in Jay White for the rest of the year. I'm just saying.
Yeah, well, I mean, we can say that, but at the same time, we wouldn't have got that great Jay White versus Naito match if that was the case.
That's a good point. And that was probably the match of the year for me.
And White still might end up as the world champion when Wrestle Kingdom goes off the air. You know?
And he better, if I'm going to stay up for 8 fucking hours, I better see White as the world champion, dual title holder.
Well, we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that next week.
No, if I'm staying... Imp, if you're listening, if I'm staying up for 8 hours, this better happen. If it doesn't, I'm going to bed. Plain and simple. And I'm going to bed halfway through the show, so you got to listen to my snoring. That's how it's going to be.
Well, are you aware that the way the card is structured is that the winners of the 2 title matches and the losers of the 2 title matches are going to face each other. So either way, we're guaranteed great matches. Wrestle Kingdom.
Well, yeah, I mean, I get that. It's NJPW. Have they put on a bad match in like 6 years?
Bad matches, yes. Bad shows, no.
When was the last time one of the top 4... okay, I'll give you tag matches have not been great. The multi-man tag matches. But once they get to the main part of the card, when was the last time we saw a bad match?
Anytime Minoru Suzuki's in there.
No, come on. Dude is awesome. Seriously, you do not respect Minoru Suzuki the way that I do.
No, because I don't think he should be able to go out there. He should be going out there beating people with chairs and not getting disqualified for it.
He's 510 years old. Give him a break.
No.
When you're that old, you got to hit a motherfucker with a chair. That's just the way it works. Jacob's here laughing at me, by the way.
Did your favorite wrestler Ric Flair have to? No, he did not.
He did, and he did it multiple times.
Not legally, and not with the referee not disqualifying him.
Once he hit 500 years old, he did.
When 900 years old you reach, look as good you will not.
No, I will. You don't understand the blood that is coursing through these veins.
No. I don't.
Jacob is literally laughing at me right now.
Good.
For those of you that don't, you've been introduced to my toddler. Jacob, say hi.
Howdy, partner.
Yeah, that's my teenager. I have a toddler and a teenager. Be jealous.
Nobody is.
I'm not even.
Worst ages kids you could have, and you have them both at the same time.
Right? This is why I drink. Right there.
But at least Jacob isn't 13; he's 16.
It's a good point. At least he can drive me around.
Yeah.
Right.
While you're getting drunk, he can drive you around to the hospital.
Ouch. No, because we can't leave the toddler.
He can throw the toddler in the car seat and drive you to the hospital.
I don't drink with my toddler. Back off, woman.
Woman?
You know what? Do you know what I'm going to do?
Just
because of that last statement, I am going to Star Wars tomorrow, and I'm going to tweet you the result.
You're going to tweet me the result?
Of Star Wars. Spoilers. It's coming.
I'm not on Twitter right now.
Fine, then I'll Facebook you.
I will ignore you.
Can you join a social media media so I can give you the spoilers
No.
that you so righteously deserve?
I don't deserve spoilers.
You deserve them.
I've been waiting for this movie for my entire life, Jeff.
You know what I'm going to do? Because you don't understand this is Disney and the end of a trilogy that is Star Wars.
Dude,
we know the answer.
I'm perfectly sure that it's going to end with the Rebel Alliance winning. That's not the point. The point is I don't want to be spoiled about like other things that happened during the movie.
I'm going to it on Wednesday. What day is it? Monday?
Today's
Wednesday. I'm going Wednesday. And I'm going to take Cliff Notes. And I'm going to reveal them to you on Friday night walking.
You broke up on me there. You're going to do what today?
That is the kind of love I have for you. Text, right? Just don't.
So you're saying to shut my phone off on Friday?
I'm pretty much saying that, yeah.
Okay.
All right.
You want to tell these fine people how else they can listen to us?
I do, but really it doesn't matter. All right, you guys. Patreon. Patreon.com/honor. That is really the go-to. Tonight we were going to do our first run at Ring Review starting in 2000. We're not going to do that by about an hour. We talk too much. So we do that maybe later this week. But patreon.com/Kingdom of Honor, you can get the last 5 to 10 episodes, counting our other show that we do, which is Dynamite After Dark. And we do these two shows, plus we do a special for our Patreon users. We're going to start doing Ring of Honor. We've done some ECW. We've done some Jessica Jones and some Marvel. I think the most recent one was Thor, and we got to get back to that. But go to patreon.com/Kingdom of Honor. You're going to get a lot of content, all for donating to us so we can continue to do this shit that you listen to and love. Also, look us up on YouTube, youtube.com/Kingdom of Honor. If we get to a certain amount of likes and a certain amount of subscribes, that's being 1,000 likes and 1,000 subscribes, then we can start doing this live on YouTube. And you can look at Shane.
1,000 total.
It's 1,000 of each.
Right.
Actually, I think it's like 2,000 likes and 1,000 subscribes, but I don't want to tell them that yet.
Good, because nobody heard that with me and you, so I was in a special chat group for that one sentence.
Attaboy. But if that happens, look at Zanman and his ugly mug every Wednesday and Monday night. It's live on YouTube. It's YouTube. Hit that subscribe, hit that notification bell, hit the like, do it all, and we'll eventually get there. It's our Twitter, and I am at Regi Co-op. He is at ZanmanLOP. Use hashtag DAD, use the hashtag KOH. That is going to get you to all of our content. And to be honest, there's starting to be quite a bit of it. And again, that's at patreon.com. You can find all that content. You can donate and help us out so we can afford all of this that we love so much.
Is that it?
I don't know.
Okay.
It's probably enough for me at this point.
Okay. Make sure you stay tuned to all the radio shows. There's no Kingdom of Honor this week because there is no Dynamite. I'm sorry, there's no Dynamite After Dark this week because there was no Dynamite. And but there should be Sports Entertainment is Dead coming up on Wednesday, because I don't think it's Christmas in the UK, right? And then I can't believe I just said that. That was hilarious.
Imp, let us know.
But then you'll have Imp with Imp's LOP Radio Adventure on Thursday. On Friday, The Right Side of the Pond. Connect with you next Monday to preview Wrestle Kingdom, which would be less than a week away from our what the hell is it called? Aftershock. Three-man weave Aftershock regarding Wrestle Kingdom.
Or is that our double lack of sleep nights?
As it'll be me, Jeff, and Imp talking about that big double Wrestle Kingdom show from NJPW coming up. And I don't know, Jeff was just whining about something. I didn't hear what you were whining about, Jeff.
Everything.
Oh, okay, so like usual, pretty much.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Alright. You don't need to sleep, dude.
I'm sleeping now.
Sleep is overrated.
I am sleeping now. There's sleep happening at this moment. All right, I'm good.
All right. Guys, that's all we've got for this week. We'll try to do better next time.
You know what? Don't our ROH show is happening tonight, is it? Oh my God. A good hour over, didn't we?
We did, yes.
All right, so Ring of Honor show is probably
not.
not.
I think you're getting drunker by the second, too.
Oh my God, dude. Ring of Honor show is probably not going to happen tonight, so we'll do that later.
No, we won't, because if I'm on the phone with you, you're going to tell me about Star Wars, and I want to fucking hear it.
I promise I will not Star Wars.
Yeah, you already threatened to spoil it. How am I supposed to believe that?
I'm a good guy, deep down on the inside.
Inside of what?
Pillows and stuff. What is wrong with me?
Time.
Oh
this
my
is
God.
Shane saying long days, pleasant nights, and Jeff saying
goodbye.
G1 Climax 27. Goodbye and good.